Welcome to the Live Unrestricted podcast, a show where you'll learn how to heal your relationship with food and your body so that you can focus your time and energy on more important things like your personal growth. I'm your host, Sabrina Magna, food freedom coach, and my mission is to help make your life happier and healthier without stress, overwhelm, or guilt about food. If you love the show, please do go out and share it. And if you're looking for support with your relationship with food, details about my programs are in the show notes. Thanks for spending time with me today. Now let's jump in. Welcome back to the show. Thank you so much for being here again today. I'm so grateful for you, and I am so excited to bring this conversation with a fascinating guest, Joanne Edinberg. Joanne is a certified eating psychology coach, and she helps health-conscious women transform from feeling stressed to feeling relaxed about food, weight, and body image so that they can focus their time and energy on what truly nourishes them. She coaches clients to find their inner wisdom to transform challenges with weight and body image into powerful opportunities for personal growth. She's on a mission to help women end the quest for the perfect diet and the perfect body, which is what we are all about here at Live Unrestricted. So if you want to learn how to relax with food, increase your joy in all areas of life, and reduce stress so that you can start feeling your best in your body, this conversation is going to be incredibly helpful for you. So today you are going to learn what eating psychology even is and why does it matter in relation to our eating habits. We're going to talk about how stress about what we're eating not only negatively impacts our mental health and our peace of mind, but actually has a very strong impact on our metabolism and digestion as well. Why obsession about what we're eating is more harmful than the food itself, the important factors that most people disregard that affect your health and how you feel about your body beyond just fitness and nutrition. We're going to talk about why allowing yourself to let go of control over food shouldn't be seen as quote unquote letting yourself go. And then we're going to talk about one simple practice to adopt before you sit down to eat to create a more peaceful and relaxed eating experience to reduce overeating and food guilt. I'm so excited about today's interview. I have no doubt you're going to have so many takeaways from it. So without further ado, let's go into our conversation with Joanne Edinberg.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yes. So I love the topic of eating psychology, and I want to jump right into it. For anyone who doesn't even know, maybe it's the first time that they hear the term eating psychology, especially because when we struggle with food, when we struggle with body image, our first thought is, I got to go on a diet. I have to get rules and restrictions. Give me all of these external changes in my behaviors, in my environment, but we don't actually look within. And so what is eating psychology?
Yeah, well, I guess in a nutshell, eating psychology is all the other things besides food itself that impact our relationship with food, like the who we are as eaters, not just what we eat, but why we eat, what we're bringing figuratively to the table, all our past experience and stories about food, when we eat and how we eat, and then all the other things in our lives that contribute to our relationship with food because they, perhaps are stressors in our lives, our relationships, our work situation, our past relationships, our environment, things like that. Mm-hmm. So all the other types of things that can impact our relationship with food that we don't typically think about, that are affecting our mindset, that are affecting, like I said, all of those other pieces. And that's what makes it so interesting, because I think we consider our relationship with food about being so narrowly defined. It's just about what we're eating. Mm-hmm. And, it's so much more than that. So
I totally agree. I often ask anyone who comes to me and they're struggling with binging or overeating, I ask them, well, how is your relationship with food? And their first answer is, well, I eat pretty healthy, or it's not good because I snack a lot. And I have to move that focus away of, well, your relationship with food actually has nothing to do with the actual quality of what you eat or the calories or the macros or the food itself. It's about what the same way that what is your relationship with your husband? You wouldn't say, well, my husband is generous, he's caring, or he's angry. You would say, well, our relationship, we fight a lot. I feel insecure. It's really, it's that connection between the two pieces. And how important would you say eating psychology, the mindset behind food, behind our eating habits is, as opposed to the actual food itself?
I think it's even more important. And, because I think of the foundational piece for me, it has to do with the stress response. Because when we're eating ideally and metabolizing and digesting our food the way we're supposed to be in this relaxation response. It's called rest and digest. And the opposite of that is the stress response. So when we're eating under a state of stress, we can't actually metabolize or digest our food well, or if at all. I mean, when we're very stressed, our digestion literally shuts down. So you could be eating the healthiest foods in the world and the best diet, and it doesn't matter, because if you're eating under stress, those nutrients aren't even going to be absorbed. They just flush right through your body. So that's why it's so important to get at these other issues and, the root causes of why we do the things that we do when we're eating, and, impact that relationship from that angle, because, like, it's because you try to eat so healthy. Like you said, your clients come in, oh, I eat pretty healthy. And I think that's the mindset of many people these days. They know what to eat. They're very educated on nutrition, and yet they're not getting the results that they're looking for. And then they feel like there's something wrong with them, like they're doing it wrong, or maybe I'm not eating quite right. Maybe I should try this other approach to eating, or this latest diet, or whatever. And, that's not really the reason why it's not working.
So let's say someone is they're eating a quote unquote clean. I hate that word when it comes to dieting. But quote unquote, they think it's a clean diet, a healthy diet. They're eating healthy foods. But they constantly feel obsessed with food. They're thinking about it all the time. They're stressed out. And even when they're eating, maybe they're eating something that they feel like they shouldn't. They feel so much guilt involved in it. Is it even worth all the stress, all the obsession? Is that helpful if it's causing you, if you're focusing so much on eating healthy that your actual eating experience ends up being stressful?
I think it really backfires. I think, because those kinds of things, the obsession with food, the worrying about food, that eat, guilt, shame cycle, the negative beliefs about food, thinking foods are good or bad, those all cause and put us into the stress response. And so, it's kind of hard to talk about these things, because everyone will be thinking, oh, well, now I'm even more stressed because I'm stressed when I'm eating, So how do we get over that? I think, the biggest piece that I work with with my clients is kind of shifting out of that judgment and criticism and guilt and shame, and how do we turn that into curiosity and compassion? Like, just being really curious and trying to understand, well, why do we do this? What are we so obsessed with food? Why do we worry about this so much? And I think there's so many cultural reasons that create the situation that we're in. It's not our fault. We have this huge multi-billion-dollar diet industry that is telling us that there's something wrong with us and that we're broken, that we need to fix it. And if we just eat this way or do this program, that's the answer. When in reality, that's not what it's about. And so, it's really, it's not easy, but it's shifting that mindset to just really trying to figure out, well, why do I do these things? Why do I crave these foods? Like, I know what to eat, and yet I just want to, eat the Halloween candy.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, from my perspective, it's almost counterintuitive, but until we can allow ourselves to eat everything and start from there, it's just going to be this roller coaster of feeling guilty and restricting and then wanting to binge. And so, how do we get back to trusting ourselves with food rather than looking to the outside experts to tell us what we should eat? Because we're born knowing what we need. Yeah. And then we, slowly but surely unlearn that.
Yeah.
So
when I hear, when you were talking about looking at things through curiosity and compassion, I completely agree. And I always talk to my clients, whenever you overeat or you emotionally eat or you act in a way around food that maybe is not ideal or that you would like to make a change, you want to look at it from a scientific point of view and looking at everything through, okay, this is data. And not looking at it, I think it's really important because before, when you're asking, we ask ourselves, like, why do we do this? I know that a lot of the listeners here will immediately start looking internally at a lack of willpower. I am not disciplined. There's something wrong with me. I am broken. And it is so easy because we've been taught by diet culture that the reason why people overeat or the reason why people are overweight is because you're lazy and you just can't control yourself around food, when really that isn't the case. And I actually posted something on Instagram yesterday where I was talking about, we're around Halloween, and I was talking about, if you binged on Halloween candy yesterday, I want you to look at all of your eating habits as there's a reason behind why we do the things that we do. And usually it comes down to mental or physical restriction, right? You weren't born with a lack of willpower. You weren't born with a lack of discipline. You weren't born feeling out of control around food. There are things you did in your life, mindsets you've developed, or restrictions that you've imposed onto yourself that have affected your eating habits. And so I just wanted to clarify that for any listeners who are looking at, why do I do this? Well, it must be that there's something wrong with me. No, how about we look at, instead of character flaws or things about your personality, we look at what actions and what mindsets do I have when it comes to food, whether it's restricting, whether it's guilt, whether it's all or nothing or scarcity, that are causing me to feel this urgency to eat all of the junk foods in one sitting, or to constantly have cravings about food. Your body is trying to talk to you and you just have to listen and work with it.
Absolutely. I love that. I mean, I think that's the key. And it's so different from a lot of what people are talking about. And in reality, I agree. It's like everything that our body is doing is trying to teach us something, whether it be a physical symptom or, cravings or binging or emotional eating. Your body's just trying to give you a message. And if you just slow down and listen compassionately rather than judgmentally, like, oh, I wonder what this is about. Like, just allow yourself to have that experience. You can't always stop your binge or whatever. I mean, just allow it to happen, but slow down and pay attention. Listen to your body. Like, what is going on physically in your body? What are the physical sensations? Can you get at what the feelings are that are going on? Usually, binge eating or emotional eating, let's talk about emotional eating. Emotional eating is eating your emotions. We're not taught how to express our emotions, in a healthy way. So we're taught from a very early age, many of us, we just stuff our emotions, and often it's with food. And so if we can just slow down and pay attention and get curious, like, what's going on? Like, what's going on in my life right now? What happened right before I was eating? Did I just have an argument with someone? Did I have a bad day at work? Or whatever it is, am I going through a very difficult period in my life? Did I just get divorced? Did I just move across the country? All of these things have huge impacts on us. And if we don't pay attention to what's going on and really get present with that, we've developed these ways to take care of ourselves. I mean, first of all, eating is supposed to be nourishing. We're meant to eat. Yeah. But sometimes we also use food or other habits to take care of ourselves, especially when we were younger, because we weren't allowed to express our feelings. We weren't allowed to actually do what comes naturally to us. So using those habits, like you said, to really try to figure out what's going on here. It's not about willpower. It has nothing to do with that. It's just normal and natural, and it's our body's way of trying to teach us something.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah. And before, when we were talking about, I'm kind of backtracking a little bit, but before, when we were talking about the obsession and the stress and the control that we have to we try to have over food. I was talking about this with actually one of my clients today, and we think that we're doing it and it's going to reap benefits in our lives. We think that by having more control over food and feeling more obsessed and feeling more stressed out about the calories and the carbs, then we're actually more likely to eat healthier, right? It makes sense. Like more control, you feel more in control. But what I always have to make my clients think about is a lot of the times we don't actually connect the dots. And I ask them, okay, let's look at evidence here. Like, let's put on that scientific hat and let's look at the data from the past. In the past, when you have tried to have more control and you felt more obsessed and more stressed out about food, does that ever lead to long-term healthy eating habits? And they're always like, well, no. But have they actually ever stopped and asked themselves that question? Is this actually helpful? Has stressing out and feeling obsessed about food actually led me to make better eating choices in the long run, consistently and permanently? Or does it lead to a short period of control and then a long period of out of control, because no human being can retain that kind of rigidity around food long term? So is this helpful? Is this going to change in a positive way? And it's just stopping yourself and asking those questions. I don't think that a lot of people do that.
I agree. I think we've been taught that, being in control is the way to go, that's going to help us get where we need to go. And I just strongly believe, from my experience with my clients, for myself, going through these processes of overcoming these challenges with eating in particular, it's like actually letting go is the answer. But it's so scary, right? Because we don't live in a culture, in general, where just letting go and letting it be is valued, Yeah. And so it's scary. It's scary to think about that, because like, what will happen? Like, no, it comes back to that trust. Like, we don't trust that we'll be able to handle it if we can just, eat whatever we want to eat in that moment.
Well, I think the fear is twofold. I think the first thing is, yes, we're definitely afraid that we're not going to be able to trust ourselves around food because we haven't done the work needed. And that's why I always recommend anyone who is looking to let go of that control and that guilt and that obsession with food to work with someone, to work with a coach, to work with a mentor to help you, because it's not just you stop caring and you eat whatever you want whenever you want. Like, there's a process behind it of learning to make peace with food and to listen to your body. So I think that's one thing. But on the other side of it, which I was talking about with my client today, is she was saying, I'm scared that if I let go of that control, then I'm going to let myself go. And what I have really had to explain is that if you don't do the work beforehand to develop self-love, to increase your self-esteem, to really want to genuinely feel good. And I know that it sounds silly to think that anyone would just not want to feel good, but a lot of these chronic dieters have learned through years and years of feeling like a failure that they're just not worthy. They're not worthy of feeling good. They're not worthy of taking care of themselves. They're not important. And so if you haven't done the work to think about, okay, why am I doing this? Am I doing this to feel good, or am I doing this to punish myself? Then of course you're going to kind of let yourself go, because you're not going to see the point of making yourself feel good. So of course you're going to overeat. Of course you're going to neglect your needs. You're going to feel like crap. You're not going to exercise, because you're letting yourself go from a place of a lack of self-love, because you haven't done the work on yourself first to do it from a place of self-care.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's so true. And I even think the term like let yourself go, it's such a negative phrase. I actually love it. I'm like, let yourself go.
Let
Be
yourself
who you
go.
are. Be yourself. And, sometimes that's messy. Sometimes, it's a roller coaster. This isn't a smooth path to, food freedom or peace with food and our relationships with food that have been rocky, right? It's not going to just happen like this. And so, yes, I think we do need to let ourselves go.
Yeah.
We need to let go of that control, this idea that we can control everything. I think, honestly, that is the key.
Yeah.
But it's like I said, it's not valued in our culture. And, it's important to get support with that, because it's not easy.
Well, I think the reason why it's been so negatively thought about is because when we think letting ourselves go visually, what you probably your mind goes to is someone gaining 50 pounds. Like that is what we have been taught to think of letting yourself go. And if you were to change your perspective away from letting myself go means gaining weight and stopping to care about my health, and actually seeing it as, okay, I let myself live. I let myself feel happy and feel joy and feel life in all of its entirety, right? I'm not holding myself in this box where I constantly have to be rigid and controlled, because when you're going to look back on your life when you're 80 years old and you saw yourself living in this rigid box for 90% of it, you are going to have so many regrets. And imagine if you made that decision today to actually start living your life. And again, you're doing it from a place of self-love. It doesn't feel good to eat quote unquote junk food, or what I like to call play foods. It doesn't feel good to eat that all the time. You're not going to feel good. You're going to feel crappy. Your body is going to tell you when you've kind of gone off the rails, or your body is going to tell you. And when you let yourself live and you let yourself play and you let yourself have good relationships and go out and socialize, all of those things are so important for your health. And you're actually going to be more likely to want to take care of yourself, to eat better, to move more when you are happy, not when you're miserable.
Right. And that goes right to that point of being in that relaxation state. The more we can do to bring happiness, joy, a sense of purpose, contribution, all those good feelings into our life, that is what's going to help us with our metabolism and our digestion. It goes back to that. It's like, and it will help take the focus off of food in our body. It's like, do the things that bring you joy, do more of that. And you more and more will make healthy choices because you feel good. Yeah. And that's what I focus on a lot with my clients too. It's like, let's shift from looking good to feeling good. What makes you feel good? And that is the key.
And I can absolutely attest to that in periods of my life where maybe I've got a big project going on for work, or I'm very stressed out. I literally won't change the things that I'm eating, but I can feel different. I'm holding on to more water weight. I don't feel as good after my meals. I feel bloated. I feel cramping. I feel gassy. Like literally, I can feel that my body processes the exact same foods. I'm not eating differently. And I know that after weeks of being stressed out, I'll be talking to friends and I'm like, I just feel like I haven't been eating so, I haven't been feeling so good about what I'm eating. And then I'm like, but I haven't been eating differently. It's my body
Mhm.
has been responding to food differently. And when I go weeks where I'm like, okay, this is like a restoring week where I do very minimal workout, I allow myself to sleep in, I go for walks, and I feel relaxed. I feel my best, and I might be eating more. I might be eating more play foods, and yet I feel better in my body. My body is digesting better. And so
Exactly.
that is very true. Like, your food could literally not change, but your body's reaction to those foods is going to be completely different depending on the state that you're in.
Absolutely. And I think that's why it's so important to focus on all of these other things, rather than focusing so much on the food. Because, like you said, you could eat a piece of cake one day versus another and have a totally different experience with that. And I think
Hmm.
sometimes just our thoughts about what we just ate, are impacting our digestion because we're feeling bad about it. We're feeling guilty. Like, why did I just do that?
Yeah.
It's the same with exercise. It's like, if you enjoy what you're doing, if you're moving because it makes you feel good, you're going to get good benefits. If you're and exercising to compensate for overeating or for needing to lose weight, that can put you in the stress response. Over exercising itself can be a stress response. So it's more looking at each situation, with what you're bringing to that
Yeah.
that moment. Yeah.
Yeah, and I used to be an avid over exerciser. I used to work out 7 days a week,
Mhm.
and I remember thinking, well, of course this is what I need to be doing. The more calories you burn, the more healthy you'll be, and the skinnier you'll be. And now I work out maybe 3 times a week. I go for walks,
Mhm.
and again, my body feels healthier than it ever did,
Mhm.
because when you are chronically putting your body under stress, your body is going to respond in a negative way. And there's no shortage of studies on the effect of stress on your body. But people don't really think about like the stress of healthy habits, like exercising and eating healthy, how it can have a opposite response on your body. And so people overdo it, and they get a counter effect of what they actually want.
Mhm. Yeah. So
Yeah.
true. Yep.
So, what would you say? So, let's say someone is in that position where they feel a lot of guilt, a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety when they're eating, whether they're eating something that they feel like they quote unquote shouldn't, or even if they're eating healthy, but they're doing it from a place of guilt and a place of
Mhm.
shame, and punishing themselves and trying to hate themselves thin. And it's very difficult because it becomes a vicious cycle. We want to eat healthier, we want to feel better, some people want to lose weight, and then the habits that we take on actually bleed into these other things that help with stress release. So we stop going
Mhm.
out to the restaurant, we stop
Mhm.
having time for play. We and I've been there feeling like, well, I don't deserve to feel good. I don't deserve to be happy if I'm not at my goal weight, or if I'm not where I want to be, or if I'm still working on this goal. Like, I don't deserve to take care of all these other things. But what you're saying is those other things are actually more important, because if you're chronically stressed but you're eating healthy and you're eating all the right foods, it's like you're trying to drive with both the brake and the gas on. Like, you're not going to get anywhere
Mhm.
because your stress response is there. So anyone who
Yeah.
is in that state, where do
Mhm.
you start? What do you focus on to start
Yeah.
putting your body in a rest and digest mode, so that you
Mhm.
can actually start enjoying food, having a little bit more play food, and your body is
Mhm.
going to respond to that food better?
Yeah. There's so many things that you can do, and yet they're simple but so difficult, right? So just like having that compassion for yourself is key. But I think the breath is huge. Like, just we have that's something that we have with us all the time. We can't live without breathing, right? And so just the difference between your breath when you're stressed versus when you're relaxed is huge. When we're stressed, we have a very shallow, quick breath. And when we're relaxed, it's deep and more from the belly, full, almost full body breath. So that's just one little practice that you can do to shift your state. And, 5 deep, full breaths, whether it's before you eat or when you're in a stressful moment, that in itself can make a difference. So that's a very small practice that everyone has access to.
Okay, so if I can recap, before you recommend doing this at least before you eat, correct?
Yeah. And if you forget, because we are in these habits that we've had for decades, possibly, it's fine. It's okay whenever you think of it. Maybe it's in the middle of when you eat. Maybe it's after you eat. Maybe it's before you go to bed. Maybe it's when you wake up. Just starting to develop that new habit and practice, can be helpful. And again, and thinking about like when you have those beliefs, those thoughts of, I feel guilty about what I just ate, rather than trying to push them away, I think it's really important to just get really present with them. Like, what are those thoughts? What am I telling myself all day, every day? Just getting more aware. That awareness is huge. That in itself, just putting the spotlight on it can help to start to shift things.
Yeah. I'm actually gonna compound on that so that our listeners have really like a actionable practice that they can take on is especially try to do this with the foods that stress you out the most. So if it's cake or cookie or pasta, whatever your specific food rules are, whenever you're about to eat those foods, yes, take that 30-second to a minute beforehand to take those big, long, deep breaths, right? Be present with yourself, with the food, because when we feel guilt, when we feel shame, we tend to rush through the eating experience. We want to get it done as quickly as possible, which leads you to not enjoying that food anyways. And then you feel bad because you did that for nothing. So taking that minute before you eat the food that stresses you out the most, taking those deep breaths. I personally like doing the breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4. It really helps you slow down and take those deep belly breaths. But then the next thing is being grateful for the food that you're about to have, right? So even if it's a chocolate chip cookie or a cheesecake, being grateful that you get to have this food that you love, like being intentional. I always tell this to my clients. If there's a food you're about to eat, and you're doing it because of the pleasure of how it tastes, because there's going to be foods, for example, I'm not going to say that cookies or candy are going to bring that many nutrients to your body. They're not. They have a different function, which is to be enjoyed. So if their sole function of that food is to be enjoyed, well, might as well satisfy that function and enjoy every single bite. And so taking that minute before you eat that food, being thankful that you get to enjoy it, and then enjoying every single bite and being intentional and deciding that you are going to be present, that you made this decision is going to, first of all, you're going to be able to slow down. You're going to be able to enjoy that meal a lot more, and you're less likely to overeat because you're not going to have that guilt from eating that food because you made that decision intentionally.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. I mean, I think eating fast is a stress response. Binging is a stress response. So if you can slow down the binge and really, like you said, enjoy it, pay attention, just focus on what you're doing, it's a lot harder to overeat because you've just stopped that quick stress response.
Yeah. And also I always say, if you're having that food that stresses you out, try not to have it on an empty stomach. Try not to have it when you are on a 1 or 2 on the hunger scale. I'm sure that you're familiar with the hunger scale, where you are so ravenous that you will literally eat a chair because your body just needs any type of fuel. Because a lot of those times, those foods are not going to be the most filling. They're not super balanced. They're not usually carbs and proteins and fats, which is totally fine. But they're not going to be the most filling. And so you're going to need to eat a lot of it in order to feel that satisfaction and that fullness. And so making sure that if you are having that cookie or that piece of cake, that you're not doing it when you're so hungry, because you will overeat, not because you're lacking willpower, but because your body is just having a biological response to not having enough energy. And then you're going to overeat, and then you're going to feel bad and you're going to blame yourself. And that triggers that whole pattern. So that is my other advice is if you want to reduce that stress response, really making sure that you're doing it when your body is not needing fuel, that you're really doing it because you want to enjoy that food.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think that's so true. It's like we tend to overeat because we haven't fueled ourselves enough before that point. And that's what happens a lot. People tend to overeat at night. Well, it's probably because they haven't eaten enough earlier in the day. It's just a natural response, right?
Yeah, I always say night binges are not a night problem. They're a day problem. All the time. And it's funny because it's so counterintuitive. We restrict in order to not overeat. And the reason why we overeat is because we restrict. So that's why this whole podcast is to really bring awareness to those habits and those mindsets that we have that are causing our eating habits. So we talked about breath, and I think that's super important in order to slow down and to be present. Of course, there's other things that we can do. We can make sure that we have more time for rest, right? There's sometimes that sleeping in is going to be better for you than waking up at 4 a.m. or waking up at 5 a.m. to get that workout done. Sleeping in, making time for your relationship with your husband, going out for dinner, doing hobbies that you enjoy. They may seem like they won't have anything. You might think of them as irrelevant. I just want to lose weight. But really, if you want to get to your body in a place of rest and digest, and you want to be able to enjoy more of the foods that you love and have a better response to it, taking care of, that's why like holistic health is so important. Taking care of those other aspects are not counterproductive. They're actually one of the most helpful things that you can do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I always ask this question as I wrap things up with my guests, but after I know that you struggled with your own issues with food and disordered eating, if you could go back to the younger version of yourself, knowing everything that you know now, what would you say to that young version of Joanne?
Yeah. Well, I mean, on the one hand, I feel like we all are meant to go through our experiences to get to where we are now. So in some ways, I just have a lot of compassion and gratitude for all of those things that I went through. But if I could have it to do over again, I would think, I think about just when I was a teenager and how much I was so uncomfortable in my skin, and I was so worried about how I looked. And at the time, I probably had a fairly ideal body type. All the time that I spent, as I got older and was dealing with health issues that I was able to cure through changes in my diet, seeing food as medicine, but also starting to develop all of those negative beliefs about food and, seeing food as the enemy. I wish I could have been able to really understand better why I started to get so stressed with food and why my relationship really took a turn for the worst.
And what do you think that why was? Like, what would you, that younger version of you who didn't know why that was happening, what would you say?
Yeah. I mean, I think, being able to say you can trust your body. You don't have to listen to all these outside experts to know what's best for you. Like to be able to really have been able to tune in and know what was right for me and not feel so worried that I was doing it wrong. Because I think, like many of us, women in particular, we're perfectionists. We want to get it right. We think we're not doing things the right way. So then we have to keep trying the next thing.
Yeah.
Being able to realize that it doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
And
you can trust yourself.
Yeah. Trust yourself and know that you'll figure it out.
Yeah. And of course, if we've got listeners here who are thinking, I don't know how to trust myself, I don't know how to listen to my body, there is a process behind it. It's not just you snap your fingers, because if you've been dieting for a long time, then you have literally taught your body to stop communicating with you, or you've ignored it for so long that you don't know how to respond to those body cues. And so if you feel like it sounds easier than said than done, then there is a process behind it to reconnecting to your body. And so if you want to learn how to do that, you can contact me, you can contact Joanne. So in terms of contacting you, if anyone wants to connect with you on Instagram, on LinkedIn, whatever it is, to find you, where can they find you?
Probably the best place is just to go to my website, which is my name, JoanneEdinberg.com, JoanneEdinberg. I'm sure you'll have it in the notes.
Yes.
That will have more information about my perspective. You can sign up for my email list. You can set up a free consultation. And, hear more. I have a program, and I know you do too, to really help work through these things and get the support you need. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Joanne. I love the topic of eating psychology, and I'm sure that we could talk about this for hours.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And thank you to all of my listeners here who joined us today, and we will see you on the next episode. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you found it valuable, I would love if you would share it with someone you know that could benefit. If you're loving the show, don't forget to subscribe over on Apple Podcasts so you don't miss a single episode. I really love hearing feedback from you, so please leave a rating and review over on Apple to help us get in the ears of more people who need it the most. Finally, come hang out with me on Instagram at Sabrina Magna Health for more educational content and get up close and personal with me. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you on the next episode. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you found it valuable, I would love if you would share it with someone you know that could benefit. If you're loving the show, don't forget to subscribe over on Apple Podcasts so you don't miss a single episode. I really love hearing feedback from you, so please leave a rating and review over on Apple to help us get in the ears of more people who need it the most. Finally, come hang out with me on Instagram at Sabrina Magna Health for more educational content and get up close and personal with me. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you on the next episode.